Welcome to Exploring Santa Cruz, a bi-weekly program on KSQD 90.7 FM. I'm your host, Matilda Rand, and my guest is Ziggy Rendler-Bregman. Let me introduce her. After growing up in Los Angeles and graduating from UCSC, Ziggy Rendler-Bregman has lived and worked in Santa Cruz for over 50 years. She has an active art and writing life and recently published her second book, Into the Thicket, a collection of poetry and art. Welcome, Ziggy.
Hello. Thank you, Matilda.
Ziggy, what is the origin of writing poems?
Well, that starts quite young, actually. I do remember writing my first poem. I probably was about 7 years old. I was spending the night with my grandmother, and I realized that I could make a rhyme. And there I went into the living room where Nana was. I recited my poem. She clapped her hands, and it was from there on. So you start quite young. And then as I got older, I was always invited to be, Zig, write a poem for this occasion. Write a poem for that one in my family.
Those grandmas, they get us going.
They do. All that affirmation.
And so you wrote a lot of poetry for your family, and then you went to an all-girl art school.
So that was very formative for me in my development as an artist and writer. I went to a very liberal all-girls Catholic high school in Los Angeles called Immaculate Heart, where Sister Carita taught art at the college. And in fact, Jewel Theater just did this fabulous play about her called Little Heart, which I think I saw 3 times. So I was immersed in the visual arts, primarily silkscreen printmaking, as well as writing, a fabulous English department. In fact, our English teacher went on to be the poet laureate in Los Angeles some years back. So yeah, really immersed in that writing and art life there in Los Angeles.
That one's then going to be your vocation?
Well, I didn't really claim that for a while. So I then went to UCSC, and in fact, I had applied for Cowell College, just the humanities college. But I came when, at the time it was Porter, the first year it opened, which was College 5, the 5th college up there. And it was the arts. And there I took poetry, I did more art classes, but I didn't major in art. I did an aesthetic studies major and didn't do art until really pretty much after college.
And then Carrillo?
Yeah, in fact, it was interesting. When I graduated from UCSC, I wanted to continue doing art, and so I took some classes at our wonderful community college, Cabrillo, and Howard Ikamoto was teaching a drawing class at the time. It was the first class I took out there, and it was so fabulous. He became such an inspiration for me. I went on to take some painting classes with him, but I do remember even my first drawing class with him, he was right in there just saying, you have a mark. You have a personal touch here. Keep drawing. So it was encouraging to keep moving along with my visual art as well.
So what kind of poetry do you write?
Well, it's a combination of things. I find that my writing leans toward a sense of place. So there's lots that reflects living here in coastal California, travel, definitely a memoir, raising 3 kids. There's poetry that weaves through that. All the poems of joy and grief and loss and gardens, and it's a reflection of my life.
The environment?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the environment and politics, really reflecting what's going on in our times. So in this recent book, Into the Thicket, there's poems about the CZU fire, there's poems about Black Lives Matter, there's a number of things that are present for what's happening around us, in us.
I understand also from going through the book a little bit, your personal journey. You express that in your poetry?
Yeah, that's always that place for a writer when it's the truth of your life. You can be pretty sure that it's the truth of someone else's life. And to find that in your own work, it's a probing. So there's a component that is definitely an interior journey that's revealed through my writing.
When you went through the CZU, did you have to wait a while till the emotions had subsided before you were able to write? I always find that with writers, that they kind of have to digest
Yeah,
first.
for sure. And so there's this place where you're collecting viscerally, kind of in your body, both for me also as a visual artist, visually, you're watching, you're listening. We felt what was going on there. I was just sort of taking both mental notes and dashing out a line here or there, remembering an image here or there. And you're right, much later than the event. You can't write about it right when it's happening. It's too new.
Well, I'm ready for a poet.
Well, I was actually considering reading one about that and thought, well, since we've just been talking about the CZU fire, I wasn't going to read it, but maybe I will. This one is called Where to Go. Having just completed the Box Loop Trail in Poganip, we pause for a moment at the rough edge of the greenbelt, stand together under a patch of cool shade, second-growth redwood. We are in the Pyrocene era, he says, as we lean back, watch a plume of thick yellow smoke haze the near coastal range. A red-tailed hawk, still hungry, circles the sooty air, screeches. Small critters scamper despite growing flames that devour far distant woods and chaparral. Sky darkens, our sunstar blurs to a burnt orange. We need Moses to strike the limestone wall with his staff, bring forth a torrent of mercy. We need someone to walk across the water, stretch out a hand to touch our fearful hearts. Home again, I watch a robin peck for seed in the driveway, stirring up ashes that continue to fall. Evacuate, we decide. I carefully choose what to take. Load our car with family photos, ice chest, the emergency file. Add the banjo and mandolin. Leaving town, I see their tents along the riverbank up against the sound wall edging the highway. Watch unhoused men, women climb into their sleeping bags. Everywhere smoke, oppressive heat, sirens deafen, everything they own crammed into a shopping cart or piled up by the side of the road. We head north, east, anywhere we might breathe. 300 miles we drive into the Sierra. Some small hint of blue would be enough. Not until Echo Summit, not until we drop into a high meadow in Hope Valley is the sky true. Far from the sting and burn of it all, others left behind. Nowhere to go. Even a cold beer cannot still my heart.
Wow. Take a little sip of water. We need it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was an experience for all of us that I think is best expressed in a poem for us to kind of really redigest and come to grips with it.
And how it affected so many people in different ways. That contrast for us, fleeing with all our stuff in the car and people by the side of the road, nowhere to go.
That's what I was thinking
Yeah.
of. I was further away in Live Oak, but you were not too far from it.
Mm-hmm.
But you could escape.
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
so you're bringing out also the social aspect of people affected by a tragedy, an accident,
Yeah.
And in this case, a natural disaster, although maybe it wasn't as natural.
Mm-hmm.
But, well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That was very important.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Let me remind people that they're listening to Exploring Santa Cruz on KSQD. My name is Matilda Rand, and my guest is Ziggy Rendler-Bregman, poet and visual artist. In your first book, you have images and poems. How do they interact?
In my first book, The Gate of Our Coming and Going, I had a number of different poems that I wanted to put together and publish. And because I'm also a visual artist, I decided to pick like 16, 17 different poems that I then responded to visually. So that was the format of that book. And I did a series of prints that accompanied those poems. And this book is very different. This book, which was built on a collection of poems from the last 8 years, I was working simultaneously painting and drawing and writing. And what I began to notice is that I was reflecting on similar things. For example, that poem I just read, I did a series of paintings at the same time. And so I started to see they weren't so much a direct response to a poem. They were just, I started to find pairings that I put together in this book. And a wonderful process in doing that, the choreography of putting a book together. I worked with an editor, and began to kind of see clusters of poems that like were families that belonged together. And working with my graphic designer, who's local, so much of this book is from support of local people, Eva Bernstein, we started pairing, looking at my work. We share studio visits all the time. Oh my goodness, this works so beautifully with this poem. And so we developed it in that way. And, R.R. Jones took all the photos of my art that are in the book. And yeah, it's a real collaboration here for sure.
I see that. So there is definitely more of an interaction between the poem and the art.
Yeah, and I love the way the book flows. So there's 4 parts of the book, and it has a definite beginning, a coming into the book, and a closure as well. It's the kind of thing where you open the book and you go, wow, I still love this book. It's so wonderful. So the 4 sections are thicket and blazing, hollow, and jewel.
And it has special meaning.
For sure, yeah.
So you talked to me about the poems. Now, what's your craft of writing? What's important, and how do you edit and all that?
Writing is hard work. I have a poem in this book that has a line, how long does it take to make a poem or a fig to ripen? I'm in a writing group, and that's very helpful because we meet every other week, and so there's always encouragement to bring something that people can look at. So I typically write when I'm outdoors, I write by hand, and then move it to the computer where I do my editing on the computer. I would say there's way more work in the editing than there is in the original inspiration. I mean, it is so amazing how much gets taken out of a poem as it's in process. And sometimes it doesn't go anywhere, and you have to really set it aside. It rarely just flows right out of the pen and is a complete piece.
And it's done. Like some of the songwriters, they write a song in 20 minutes.
Yeah. What I might get as a first line, and that's wonderful. But then the other part is really hard. And running it by other people and getting feedback is essential.
What would be a successful day of writing be for you?
Silence. All writing has to come out of solitude and silence. So successful for me is closing the door and allowing the work to emerge and having that discipline to sit down, whether or not I feel like writing, and write. I go on writing retreats. That's helpful. Getting writing prompts, taking workshops that kind of take you in new directions or explore new ideas. It's a process. And the craft is learning all of the delicacies of things like line breaks and how something looks on the page. That's really important to me as a visual artist. So I play a lot with the typeface, the spacing between lines, where a line ends and where it begins, and that's ongoing. Put a comma in, take a comma out.
So sometimes that's all you do during a day.
Yeah, that can be. Really, and setting it aside and trying to figure out, oh gosh, this isn't done.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you talk about a comma. I have a friend who lives in a senior park, and there is this sign just before you go into the park, and it says, Slow Senior Park.
Slow seniors.
I told her yesterday, I said, what is that with slow seniors? And she said, I'm going to go home right now, and I'm going to get a marker, and I'm going to put a comma in.
They're a great example.
I'm ready for another poem.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to read you a poem from my childhood memories as well. I grew up in a family of 9, and I am the 4th in that lineage, and we're all quite close still. We do, especially since COVID, we do a Zoom every couple of months, so it's like Hollywood Squares, there's 9 of us in the windows. So this poem is called My Father's Avocado Tree. I was 10 when I first climbed to its highest limb, cooling breeze, necessary silence, and perfect shade. I plucked spotted green fruit, dropped them into the hands of my sister waiting below, while my father numbered each one with a ballpoint pen. He set them in a wooden bowl on the butcher block counter to ripen, insisted we eat them in the order picked. That fall, we harvested 167 avocados. My father died soon after he quit smoking, before my second baby was named. Still, his avocados ripened. No one could keep up with numbering. Crows and pigeons pecked, fruit fell. One season, grief broke, and the harvest ended. My mother's 9 children had left home one by one. She planted a new tree in the backyard. From the pit she rooted, tended in a glass jar placed on the windowsill by her African violets. Now she is buried beside my father on a hillside. A single juniper faces west. Its boughs provide a blue shade. Grass cut short, my handful of lilies, their graves easy to find.
So we talked about your craft of writing. What about your craft of painting?
Well, similarly, there's always that moment of facing the blank piece of paper or the blank canvas, and it's about making a mark, just getting in there and breaking the surface. I paint both outdoors, inspired by landscape, but I would have to say paint my interior landscape. Sometimes a lot of my work is very abstract, but it is observing nature and observing my interior life. And so you break the surface and then you start to play. And then it becomes a kind of call and response, because every mark you make, there's another mark that is eliminated. So there's a moving, there's an adding and a subtracting. And I have a strong sense of color, but you're using all the elements. You're always looking at shape, you're looking at line, you're looking at texture, you're looking at composition, and all those things are at play. And so it's a constant movement. I work on more than one piece at a time. I'm either painting, drawing, or I also work in monoprint, which is a form of painting on a plate. And then I have a different kind of a surface that I'm working with there. I work primarily in acrylics and oil sticks and oil-based inks when I'm in the print world.
And so again, just like with the poems, if it's not working for you.
If it's not working, either I set it aside and come back to it. My husband has been very upset with me various times because I will literally tear something up. He'll go, what did you do? And there's a lot of stop and start. But the beautiful thing is you can always paint something out. Paint is so forgiving. You can always add something. And there's always that question, well, when is it finished? It's finished when you decide you're finished with it, I think, and go to the next.
So there's something called gesso?
Gesso is kind of a way to prime a piece of paper or a canvas to begin. You can either use white or black. You can start with a black surface, or you can start with a white surface. And it can also be used it's an opaque material, so you can use that to eliminate something, like basically start over. So it can have both a positive mark, and it can also be used to negate something. Yeah.
So you don't erase, you just put something on top of it, which makes it that you can start fresh.
Yeah, that you can start fresh again.
That's interesting.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to erase marks in painting. Scraping away is another, sanding away is another, depending on surfaces and such.
You self-published these 2 books. What's that like?
It's lovely and wonderful and challenging. I've sent work out to be published in journals, and like every other poet, sometimes they're accepted and sometimes they're not. But when you have a collection, as I felt that I did in both these cases, why not? I mean, it was really, my mom at one point said, when are you going to publish your poems? And well, sure, why not? It was printed at community printers. As I said, my friend Eva designed the book, both books. And it's a real joy to gather. I mean, I'm at the age and stage in my life, the fruit is ripe. It's gather and give it back to the world. I feel like that's part of what this is now. No one has to accept it. I get to make it, and I get to put it out into the world. And people respond to it. Done Open Studios many years, and I actually did it this year. The book just came out in late fall, and people loved it. So it's wonderful to have this combination of the writing and the art.
Earlier you said that the placement on the page is extremely important. So here we have a poem, and here we have a painting, at least a photo of the painting. And then you start moving things around. Do you do anything else?
Well, and again, this is a collaboration with my graphic designer, and my goodness, so patient, the process. And every artist knows it's a patient process. When you have an eye, it really matters. You say, could you just move that up just a little bit? Or could you make that a little smaller? That's too dominant in relationship to the if you want to say the mass of the poem on the other side of the page. So could we try that this way? And because everything's designed on the computer, then you can look at a mock-up and say, oh yeah, do that. And there were instances in some of my poems where a line might be too long. And as I was saying earlier, it's really important where the line breaks are. You don't want your words like in the gully of the book. So I had to like rearrange even a few lines so that it could work visually on the page.
So you still edit the poem in order to make it
Yes.
look good on the page
Yes.
and make it of it. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Good. Since we talk about your books, if people want your books, where can they find them?
Well, you can find them at Bookshop Santa Cruz in both the local writer section and the poetry section. You can find them on my website, which we will give to you, I'm sure. And yeah, and I will mail my poetry. I also do some readings and open studios and anywhere. Like, this is a wonderful gift to be able to share with you and your audience this work.
Yeah. So talking about the website, it is your full name, Ziggy Rendler-Bregman, no dashes, no nothing. Ziggy is Ziggy, and then Rendler is Rendler. Bregman is Bregman.com. Ziggy Rendler-Bregman.com. And your email is a nice one. It's zig, your first three letters, zig, poet@gmail.com.
That one's easy.
Yeah.
The website stuff.
zig.poet@gmail.com. You talked about readings. Are you having readings coming up?
Yeah, and I love to read my work. I am actually tomorrow, and of course you're all invited, doing a public reading up at Chaminade Resort and Spa in mid-county there, and it's out in the courtyard outside where the view is over Monterey Bay. And I will have a band. My husband's band, Open Heartstrings, is going to be playing at 4 o'clock. I will read at 4:30, and then they'll play again at 5. And one of the beautiful things that I do want to say is that there are several poems that they accompany me to music. So I read 2 poems with music behind it, and it's wonderful. In fact, I do want to tell you about this. It might be a good time to tell you. One of the things that I'm really excited about in the book, this was an idea that I thought was just so fabulous, is I put a QR code in the back of the book, and it links you to my website. I have 6 different poems that have music behind them, and it's beautiful because my father's avocado tree, behind that is my college mentor and advisor, Ivan Rosenblum, playing a piece on piano. So I've stayed in touch with him all these 50 years. And my son is a classical guitarist. He accompanies me on a poem. My daughter plays classical guitar. It's a family affair. But anyway, it adds a whole nother dimension to have
more
music
art.
behind, to more art, more music, more collaboration, more sharing of the joy I have for the blessing of having the gift of the visual art and the writing and music and putting all this together.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So it means that we have to have another poem.
Oh, we have to have another poem. Well,
We
there you
have to
go.
have-
Okay. When you asked me, where do I write? And I've been able to travel. And so this poem is called Bernini on the Way to Heaven. And it was inspired by visiting the Borghese Gallery in Rome. Sweet bay, true laurel found along the fog-drip way. I do not know where Daphne hides. To whom will I turn, trust what I cannot see? In this deep woodland, I lean against lichened trunk, whisper and wail. Anointed with last night's storm, twinge of ache, of desire, my freckled arm now bark dry and flaking reaches. A pair of damp, slender leaves silvered with mist. Feel how my skin, bark of splotch and scar, peels. I am all these shining leaves, unfurling, falling to pieces. Where is the carver to chisel my longing, burnish my hope? In every nearby voice of gurgling stream and blue-eyed daughter, someone sings, someone is waiting, someone is free.
Pause here.
Yeah.
That's gorgeous.
You know, if there's time,
Yeah.
one more poem.
Okay.
Would that be possible?
Yeah.
So this is the poem that is the kind of signature poem of the book, Into the Thicket.
Okay.
I want to live like the bluebird, offer my flash of brilliance, then disappear into the woods, song melodic, lilting. I want to say what needs to be said, like honk of gander, cluck of dame, or gentle patter of rain pinging my kitchen window. I want to know when to close it. I want to walk in this downpour, face stinging with joy, past the furthest farmhouse, the sheep, goat, and rooster. I bow to drenched field. Here I follow the deer who leaps into the thicket, drinks from the hidden stream.
Perfect way to end this. Thank you, Ziggy. And I want to remind people that this was Exploring Santa Cruz with Ziggy Rendler-Bregman. Her email is zig.poet@gmail.com. And I want to thank everyone who listened to this program, Exploring Santa Cruz, on KSQD 90.7 FM and streaming online at ksqd.org.